This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
No one goes to Hank's for his spreadsheets. They go for a darn good pizza. Lately, though, the shop's been quiet, so Hank decides to bring back the $1 slice. He asks Copilot in Microsoft Excel to look at his sales and costs and help him see if he can afford it. Copilot shows Hank where the money's going and which little extras make the dollar slice work. Now Hank has a line out the door. Hank makes the pizza, Copilot handles the spreadsheets. Learn more at m365copilot.com/work.
LinkedIn is great at connecting you with the world's largest professional network. But it can't connect you with motivation on a Monday morning. LinkedIn can help you get insights from your professional community. But it can't give you any insight into why Dave's still talking on mute. And while it can't stop your boss from bringing tuna for lunch, LinkedIn can help bring your career to the next level. LinkedIn is the network that works for you. Visit LinkedIn.com to learn more.
Where is Daredevil?
I'm right here. Don't miss the return of Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again.
So what's next?
I feel liberated.
We're gonna take this city back.
Over medicated.
In an all-new season, now streaming only on Disney+.
They're hunting us. It's time we started hunting them.
I can work with that.
This should be tons of fun.
Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again, now streaming only on Disney+.
Pay's checkout is offered by your banks and credit unions. So when you shop online at participating merchants, your cards appear in one place. Pay's. It checks out. Activation required. See Pays.com to learn more. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, Eagles and draft fans. Welcome to the Big-Legged Wastebenders podcast. I'm your host, Wannab. Today, we'll be talking about Mekai Lemon. We'll also be talking about how I might have approached the first round differently than Howie Roseman. No one's right, no one's wrong. It's just alternative ways to look at things, which is important in this biz. If you're in the business of team building, if you're in the business of player personnel evaluation, you have to consider multiple different possibilities, multiple different doors that you can walk through when you're building your team. And I just want to provide some alternative points of view. Now, let's go back to draft day. I had only watched at the time of the first round 2 all-22 tapes of Mekai Lemon, maybe some highlights as well. My initial gut reaction was this is a skilled, good football player, hard-nosed football player, physical player, a little bit low on physical translatable traits to the next level. That was my early impressions. And I did not consider him further. I had a nudging feeling in the back of my mind that due to that lack of perceived translatable physical traits, he might slide to our pick or short trade up range in the draft, and he did. But I had to cram in other draft prospects the day of the draft, the day before that, and I was trying to cram guys in, and I just didn't get a chance to circle back to him. So after they drafted Mekai, I happily circled back to him. I looked at 3 or 4 different game tapes. I looked at more analysis. I posted in the days after the draft at the Eagles Film Room on Patreon clips of his plays from several of his games. And it was fun to watch, man. He is a good football player. And I was happy with the pick. Now, I want to talk about some of the reasons I'm happy with him as a draft prospect, and also some of the reasons I'm happy that they went wide receiver in the first round in this draft. First, I'll start off with Mekai Lemon, the prospect. Only a handful of receivers in recent draft history, in recent years, have averaged over 3 yards per route run against zone and against man. Mekai Lemon is one of them. The vast majority of them were high-end receivers in the NFL. Now, I don't consider that yards per route run metric as a great way to judge a player's ceiling, but if somebody's good at both, and especially if they're good at zone, it helps you judge that player's floor. It means that they can get open against a wider array of coverages that you might see in the NFL, since there's a lot of heavy zone coverage in the NFL. It shows a certain level of either smarts or explosiveness or speed or some combination of skills for that player. In the case of Mekai Lemon, the first thing that jumps out about him versus zone coverage for me was his recognition and his reaction to it. As soon as he was a couple yards into his route, He knew whether or not he was facing man or zone, and he adjusted accordingly on the fly, super quick post-snap processing. And he was manipulating defenders right off the bat. If he was facing some sort of two-read type coverage, he was manipulating that nickel corner, widening him inside, and then turning back outside to that gap between the outside corner, reading the number 2 and the nickel. If he was facing some sort of quarters coverage where he was mainly being covered deep by the safety, immediately he recognized it, and he was in manipulate the safety mode, like at the blink of an eye. That quick recognition and those quick decisions and those quick actions off those decisions. Folks, it's not only the quarterbacks who read and react in the NFL. It's not only running backs who read the holes at the line of scrimmage and decide how to manipulate those holes and make decisions on which hole to pick. It can also be receivers, and especially receivers against zone coverage. And that read and react, that decision-making process on how am I going to manipulate this defender once I realize this is not hardcore man defense. Next level stuff from Mekai Lemon. Next level. You factor in that once he gets into that hole in the zone, he has excellent hands and excellent body control. If that quarterback can recognize certain types of zone coverage, he's going to know early in the progression Mekai's going to get open, and he can look for him confidently and be releasing that ball as Mekai is making his break. This is a good football player who can earn the trust of a quarterback. And you saw it at the college level. That quarterback, a lot of times he was looking at other parts of the field, but that was just to look people off. He'd see a certain type of coverage, and he knew the whole way, I'm throwing this to Mekai. And it was a good college quarterback from what I can tell. And Mekai would get open, especially against zone. Now, against man, he has abilities to get open as well. I didn't find his traits physically to get open versus man as next level, but I do think he can do it. I do think he has some ability to beat press coverage as well, especially with a two-way go, like if he's a slot or as an X up on the line of scrimmage but reduced. I do think that he has the ability with those two-way goes to defeat press coverage, especially if he has the freedom to break off short routes over the middle of the field. Now, whether or not the quarterback's going to throw those short routes over the middle is up for debate. But the nice thing is, even if we don't see our quarterback throwing those short routes over the middle to Mekai, there's other things Lemon can do. He was especially good on slot fades, getting to that outside hip of the defensive back. If you were in the high red zone or even in parts in the middle of the field and he had the opportunity to do a slot fade against a nickel, he was going to get to that outside. And the thing is, I mentioned he does not have that elite separation ability one-on-one, but if he can manipulate you well enough just to get to your outside hip, he was going to use his physicality as his separation. He didn't have to get open for the quarterback to trust him and that 50-50 ball down the sidelines from the slot fade. So long as he was able to get to that outside hip, the quarterback was trusting that he was going to keep that cornerback on his inside hip. He's on the outside of the cornerback, so the cornerback's on Mekai's inside hip on that slot fade. And he was going to trust Mekai to keep that cornerback as he's running down the field, boxed out as he's moving, and react to the ball late and make that tough contested grab due to a combination of his hands, his physicality, and his body control. And let me tell you, he caught a high amount of contested catches, and it was really nice to see. And I do believe the Eagles intend to use him that way, especially with Jalen Hurts and the way he likes to throw outside the numbers, and the way he likes to throw back shoulder, and the way he likes to throw a little slot fade and a little one-on-one 50 ball action down the sidelines. Those are throws that are unlikely to get picked off, and it's not throwing to the middle of the field, which Hurts does not like to do a ton. He's going to have to do it a little bit more than he has in the past, but I don't think he necessarily has to live in the middle of the field. So it's great that Mekai can get open on these routes where he's either manipulating a safety or a corner and breaking out on outbreaking routes, or he's on the slot fade downfield and can use his physicality one-on-one to come up with the contested grab. Now, I'm saying all these nice glowing things for the most part about Mekai Lemon. The reason why I would have passed on him in the first round is I saw that Denzel Boston, Cassius Howe, Omar Cooper Jr., those three guys were all still available on the board. And if they were, my plan was to trade back and double dip at wide receiver. Most likely wide receiver, if that's the way the board fell. Don't want to force a pick. And the board did fall that way for me, according to my plans. I would have gained probably the 68th pick, which was an early third rounder, and pick 167. 167, I likely would have ended up with offensive tackle J.C. Davis, with plans to slide him inside to guard. He was a physical, violent, and versatile run blocker at the college level who looked like he had enough strength to slide inside to guard and struggled a little bit in pass protection out on the edge. So I would have drafted him with the idea of potentially sliding him into guard in a year down the line. I would have drafted Denzel Boston at 28, and with that 68th pick, I likely would have ended up with Skylar Bell, wide receiver. Now, Denzel Boston and Skylar Bell are not as good as Mekai Lemon at football right now, but it's a little bit easier for me to see where their translatable traits are, and to also not only bolster wide receiver 2 position, but the wide receiver 3 position, which is pretty important to me now that A.J. Brown is gone. Now that A.J. Brown is gone, and we have a less dominant two-headed attack at wide receiver, we can't neglect wide receiver 3 like we have been for years. And I know Howie took strides attempting to not neglect wide receiver 3, in part for this reason. He went out and got Wicks from Green Bay. He went out and got Hollywood Brown. And both of these guys are upgrades to what we're used to at wide receiver 3. Personally, I saw an opportunity in this draft to improve wide receiver 3, probably beyond even what Hollywood Brown and Wicks can give you, and to do so at less coin and less cap dollars. So that would have been my approach. Now, Denzel Boston, as I mentioned, is not as good as Mekai Lemon right now, but he's almost 6'4". He's around 219-ish pounds. He's got excellent hands as well as Mekai. He has excellent body control as well as Mekai. His straight line speed, once he gets going, might even be a little bit better, a straight line burst of speed. So knowing that I could get Denzel and then double dip and get a guy in Skylar Bell who I felt is probably going to be an upgrade to Brown and Wicks, or at least be in the mix, I would have liked those options better. Now, I would have looked at Mekai Lemon, and I talked to you guys about his contested catch ability down the sidelines and how that's valuable for the Eagles in particular with the way Jalen Hurts wants to throw those balls. But somewhere I hear this old draft monk chanting up on a hill out in nature. And it's just this guy with this wisdom, this draft wisdom, and he's chanting and he's calling me. And I climb up this mountain and I go to the draft monk, and the draft monk says to me, make sure the skill matches the translatable physical trait. And the thing is, Mekai Lemon is 5'11 and 190-ish. Yeah. So I do think he's going to catch some 50-50 balls, but I don't know if he's necessarily going to be able to do it as consistently, as frequently, and as reliably as he did at the college level. Contested catchability doesn't translate to the next level as well as the ability to separate. So I would have seen that with Mekai Lemon. I would have fought back my urges to trade up for him because I love him. He's such a cool football player. And I would have probably overthought things personally. Sometimes I tend to overthink, and sometimes I tend to play things a little too safe. And I would have traded back, got that Denzel Boston, who has the translatable trait. If I see Denzel Boston on a one-on-one in the back corner of the red zone, or on a fade route, or a go route with a back shoulder throw down the sidelines, I would have thought, okay, almost 6'4", 220, also flashes some contested catchability. I would have thought he might have been able to do that just as well as Mekai Lemon, while giving me a different body type in my wide receiver room. Who knows who will be right, Howie Roseman or Philly wannabe GM? I think a whole bunch of you out there listening to this right now are probably saying, I'm going to go with Howie Roseman. I don't blame you one bit, because I'll be honest with you, flip a coin, either approach could work out. Really can. Skylar Bell is already 24 years old, and he looks like one of those super twitched up dudes who's could potentially be a chronic soft injury issue. He has some hands issues as well. He didn't drop the ball this past year, but he addresses the ball in the air a bit of a weird way. So all these guys have warts. Denzel Boston rounds out his routes, and he doesn't make those snap judgment decisions against zone coverage, sitting down in the holes in the zone the way Mekai Lemon does for his quarterback. But those are skills he could probably learn in time. I'm looking at translatable traits as well as skills. So, tough call. Now, the wide receiver room, and why I am happy that Howie Roseman was with a wide receiver in the first round. First off, the offensive tackles available at our pick, they were risky. They were guys that, you could flip a coin on, maybe even less than a coin flip, on whether or not they were going to become high-end offensive tackles. In some cases, it wasn't even clear that they were going to become good starting offensive tackles in the NFL. These were guys with some project stuff on them. The safer bets at offensive tackle in this draft that didn't have a lot of star-studded talent at the top, they went early. And in my offensive line pre-draft pod I talked about months ago, I highlighted that in the late first, the guys who are going to be available are going to be risky. And I even said at the time, I feel a whole lot more comfortable drafting Markel Bell in the third round than one of these guys with the bigger names late first. And that's what the Eagles did. So kudos to Howie. I think that Markel has some pad level issues. Of course he does. He's 6'9", for crying out loud, and he's built a little top heavy. But this is a guy with a good head on his shoulders with great length, good technique. And I suspect if he doesn't develop into an NFL starter down the line, the likely floor for him is a high-end backup swing tackle who is an upgrade to Fred Johnson. That's pretty good in the third round. Offensive tackles in the third round in any draft are difficult to acquire. And we have Lane Johnson this year. Who knows, maybe Lane Johnson likes this new system where he doesn't have to block things up quite the same way he did under Stout, and decides, maybe I'll play another year. Then what are you going to do? You drafted a questionable offensive tackle to begin with in the first round, and then you might not be able to use that offensive tackle for 2-3 years as a starter? No, people, no. I understand the desire to go get that offensive tackle. It's an important position. In today's NFL, wide receiver is even more important. I know that is upsetting for some people out there to hear. We all have our theories and our feelings about football and how to team build. But some of those feelings and theories are based off the recent past. Things change. The rate of increase of pay for the wide receiver position over recent years has skyrocketed. You're paying good coin out there in trades and free agency for guys who are barely solid role players. Good number twos and good number ones are hard to acquire. In the draft, you used to be able to wait at wide receiver till day 2, and half the time you were more likely to get a good player on day 2 than you were on day 1. But now, if you wait, you're too late. The NFL has gotten better at evaluating and analyzing the wide receiver position, and there is more of a hunger. There is more of a team-building hunger for those wide receivers. So you got the bigger demand with the pay increases, and you got the supply.
This episode is brought to you by Perfect Bistro Cat Food. Cats, this ad is for you. Has your human ever called you picky, persnickety, choosy? If so, Perfect Bistro Cat Food is for you. With ingredients like wild-caught tuna and pasture-raised lamb, tantalizing textures, and delectable flavors that meet even the most discerning cat standards. You're not picky, you're just perfectionists. Perfect Bistro, mealtime perfection for every cat. Have your human visit perfectbistro.com.
This summer, soccer is here, and so are the watch parties. And Uber Eats has your game day essentials covered with 30% off orders from Aldi, Kroger, and Dollar General. Everything you need to keep your crowd happy, delivered straight to your door. Chips, dips, fresh ingredients, and more. Order in so you can lock in for the games. 30% off your grocery order, only on Uber Eats for a limited time.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Where it's easier to evaluate these wide receivers, in part because NFL teams are better at it, also in part because wide receivers are coming into the league more developed than they were years ago. I don't know if it's the internet. I don't know if it's the explosion of year-round 7-on-7 leagues, but knowledge has spread, coaching has spread, learning has spread, practice has become more focused. The college game of football has more passing in it than it did 10, 20 years ago. These guys are coming out more developed, and those guys that were slipping to day 2 are now being drafted in day 1. It used to be, there's this high college production guy at a big name school. I don't know if he has translatable traits. I don't know if he has translatable skills, but he's got a big name. He has a Heisman, and or he just had big production. Maybe I'll take this wide receiver in the first round. Or they would draft the height, weight, speed freaks, and they were wrong as often, if not more often, than they were right. Guys that had no business going in the first round at the wide receiver position. That's who used to get drafted, and better wide receivers would last the day too. But that's no longer the case. So you're going to take a questionable offensive tackle who might not start for you for years over a guy who might be a good wide receiver too? I'm going good wide receiver too all day long in that late first round. And it's a paradigm shift in terms of team building philosophy. And it's one that I'm glad that it is at least being partially accepted by Howie Roseman. I'm sure he was tempted to draft an offensive tackle, but I'm glad that he decided to attack wide receiver instead. Now, going back to Mekai Lemon, comparing him to some wide receivers in the league with bigger names like Amon St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. To me, those guys are a step above him, and I'm going to give some reasons why. When I look at JSN and when I look at Amon-Ra, I see guys who in short areas have either a little bit more jukiness or a little bit more straight line sudden burst where they can create that temporary separation than Mekai Lemon. Mekai has some of that straight line burst. He does have some physicality and some quickness and some juke ability, but not to me physically to the level that those guys. He is a little bit smaller than JSN. He is about the same size as Amon-Ra, maybe to me a little bit less strong physically, a little bit less explosive in short areas physically. I then compare him to Puka Nacua, and I see the way Puka Nacua is used. It's amazing. Like his numbers get padded so much because of the situation he is in with that head coach, that offensive mind. He's used as a tight end half the time, as like an extension of the run game. They put him in motion constantly. They get him in situations where he's more likely to be going against linebackers and some safeties, and they feed him the ball. And you can do some of that with Mekai Lemon. He has some of that physicality tight to the line of scrimmage or in motion to the line of scrimmage where he can block in the run game. He sprung his running back for big gains constantly all season long at USC. And he wasn't a dominant, overpowering blocker, but he was a very physical and very smart blocker. And he always gave that running back the angle. Always. And you can use him in that role. Right now, he's a better blocker, and it's probably not even close, than Eli Stowers, our tight end in the second round. That's a topic for a different day. I'm not going to get into that right now. So you could use him in motion the way this offensive system is prone to do with an F-type player or a Z-type player, as he will be in the scheme, in this likely LaFleur-esque, Shanahan-esque scheme that we may be adopting. And you could put him in motion, you could put him as a blocker, you can manufacture short touches for him. I don't think he's going to excel at that quite to the degree that Puka Nacua does. Puka Nacua is a couple inches taller. I don't remember the exact weight. He's at least 10 pounds heavier, and he's got longer strides. So if you're doing that manufacture stuff, it helps to have more length and more stride length in my view, with like Puka Nacua has compared to Mekai Lemon. So again, I'm comparing Mekai to all these different molds. I talked about how he can do some of the same stuff A.J. Brown did, just from the slot position and not out wide. He can do some of the stuff Puka Nacua can do. He's kind of a slot, just like Amon-Ra St. Brown can be. He's a little bit of all these guys, but I'm not seeing that clear mold that he 100% fits where I'm like, okay, this is a definite wide receiver 1 or a very high-end wide receiver 2. So that's what gave me pause enough to do the trade back and take multiple swings at the wide receiver plate instead of drafting Mekai. I love Mekai Lemon. I'm glad they drafted him. I think he is going to help our offense. If you have a smart coordinator, I don't understand how this guy doesn't help your offense. Even if he only ends up being an 800-yard receiver, I think I'm fine with that because of all the different ways he can help out your team. He's good in the red zone. He's good against zone. He's good in the run game, and he's pretty good in motion. And he's smart as a whip with excellent hands, excellent body control. If you can't figure out a way to use that guy to help you win games, you are the problem, not him. One other note about Mekai Lemon. It was kind of an internet meme, a handful of guys on social media accounts who love to put people down and get some clicks out of it, who were making fun of Mekai Lemon, how he was rocking back and forth with his eyes down and making fun of his interview. I watched that interview pre-draft, and I loved it. I loved it. He had quick answers. When there were questions about his teammates, he had quick answers at the ready, supporting his teammates, highlighting specific strengths they had. He was well rehearsed. He sold it. He was eloquent. There was no hesitation. That's a good interview. That's a good interview, folks. That's a good teammate. That's a guy with head on his shoulders. If he rocks back and forth looking like a caged animal during the interview, good! I'm not drafting him to be a librarian. The link is the Colosseum, and this is ancient Rome. I want a big dog burning in this guy's chest. I want him to break out of that interview and want to play ball. And I see that aggression, but it's controlled aggression. Snap to snap, this guy is physical. This guy is violent, but he's smart. He uses that physicality. He uses that desire to hone his craft out in the field of play. I want that. I want that on the field. Whatever's burning in him, that he wants to show the world what he can do. Like, he looked in that interview like he couldn't wait to just run out in the field and do stuff. And he shows that aggression, snap to snap, and the emotions don't get the best of him. He plays physical, he plays smart, he plays emotionally, but it never gets the best of him. Snap to snap. His head is in the game, all game long. Give me that. And shame on you guys for making fun of him. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. Go Birds.